First, I really want to thank everybody for being here. This isn't a typical press conference. There's no talking points. It's taking way longer because it's such an important issue. I want to thank our media partners for covering it. I think it'll be more than a 1-minute story tonight. I hope you'll have enough content to do other things and really dive into this, because this is one of the issues of our time. Before I go forward, I just want to acknowledge the lived experience and the stories that we heard today. And I just want to thank people for being that honest with their lives in front of the cameras and the lights. So thank you for that. I came here today because the groups that were sponsoring this said, what's your response, city? It's been a year. Come tell us your response to our messages. So I want to be clear that I support all the work and the advocacy that's going on, but I'm really here as the only citywide elected official who in our city to try to tell you about what's going on and some perspective of what we're trying to do as a city from my perspective. I'm not speaking for the entire council, so we haven't had a vote on what I'm going to say. But I think I know what their hearts are and what we're up to. So that's why I'm here today, is to just give a response. Since this is all going on, you can get it all. You can get their lived experience and their requests and demands, and you can hear a city elected official's response. But before I do that, I ask permission for a moment of personal privilege. About 11 days ago, I announced publicly that I was undergoing some cancer treatment, so I'm living that treatment in public. So to let people know and maybe save some time afterwards of telling 30 people what's going on, I'm doing really well. I'm 1 day away from finishing my 3rd week of treatment of chemo and radiation. And as you can see, I'm doing pretty darn well. I've got 4 weeks to go. My family and I appreciate all the well wishes that we've gotten. So I just want to acknowledge we've gotten plenty, and whether it's a text or an email, and don't feel like you need to send a card, but I've gotten some from my closer friends. We're just feeling very supported. So just want to thank you and acknowledge that moment as well. But I tell you, if anything that could get me off my medical leave, it would be police reform. So I'm here for that. And I think it's fair for anyone that doesn't know me well, or any viewers, that they understand where I'm coming from, what my experience is, so that you understand, because we always need to know, well, what are the prejudices and agendas for people? And so I've been a lawyer for just about 30 years, and I want you to know that most of my clients over those 30 years are victims of crime and other illegalities. That's who I represent, crime victims. And along the way, I've represented several law enforcement people, both as victims of crimes and also as they're in departments and they're being abused by their superiors. So I've represented law enforcement. In my current, I was best known for suing the city for some police misconduct over the years. But since 2016, I've been on the city council. And I represent all groups in the city now, whether it's neighborhoods, whether it's crime victim advocacy organizations, whether it's police reform advocacy organizations. I represent our police department to try to make sure that they have the training and the resources that they need to do their job and can stay safe. So for the last 5.5 years, my job has been to represent all those. And I do my best to meet with them. I've met with the police guild, the lieutenants and captains. I meet with police leadership. I've participated in videos that help tell the good things that they've done. I've met with SCAR numerous times and other groups. I've met with, like I said, the crime victim advocates. So that is how I view my role. And so I don't view myself as a single advocate anymore, which is what I did when I was doing these issues as a lawyer. So in a little bit indifferent than that, I have done so many cases on police practices in the Fourth Amendment and when police can stop and not stop. And I've argued before courts, up and down, state courts, federal courts, appellate courts. And I feel like I know those, even though I'm not a police officer and would never be one. I know those issues from a legal perspective. I've also done lots of constitutional law around the Fourth Amendment. I've taught constitutional law. And I've always been active in the legislature and lobbying. And in the last 4 years, I've worked for Association of Washington Cities in their legislative lobbying and process. And you'll hear in a moment how involved they are with that. And the Association of Washington Cities is a complete middle-of-the-road organization by everybody's judgment. So I just wanted to do that background. So to just take a step back, a little over a year ago, in May, George Floyd was killed. Our city rose up and said, we got to do something. City Council, what are you going to do? And we have spent that year with stops and starts trying to address these issues as best we can for the entire city, for all people in the city, regardless of your position. And the first thing that we did was I published a list of maybe 25 potential police reforms. And that's on our website right now. You can see it, what they were at the time. I think we published those in June. And not long after that, the city administrator and the mayor came to me and said, can we do something more collaborative, do something a little different that's going on in other places? And we did. We agreed. We said, all right, let's figure out how to have a community conversation about these, rather than the city council jamming through some laws and then the administration refusing to do it and then having to go to court, and who knows how that would turn out. Because the idea, and I'm happy to have other people who disagree with me, because there's other people who said, this has been too long, just pass the law, go to court. And there's a piece of me that says, when we change the hearts and minds of people on the other side, if we can get there together, we will really be there, and we will not have to be in risk. So that is my personal belief, and when I got the other side to say yes, they would do that, that's the way I went. We negotiated several things that we think we can just start implementing, but there were some other tougher ones that were the subject of these bills. So we started that process in negotiating. COVID got worse. We couldn't figure out how to do it safely with in-person, and it got delayed. All sorts of things happened. It got delayed way too long. But the idea evolved into what we would do is we would have a group of about 20 people as a precursor to a full community conversation. And the 20 people were designed to be representative of different groups. We have multiple police officers and leaders. We have multiple people from communities of color and community police reform. We have crime victims. We have a retired judge. We have someone from the neighborhoods and various people. The idea was to have a conversation and find out where the common ground and where the hard points and the pitch points, and what worked in terms of resolution, in terms of people just, instead of people talking past each other, which is often the case and kind of going on right now. If you compare the police chief conference with this conference, you'll be like, yeah, you're talking past each other. So the idea was just to do a bit of a pilot on that community conversation, and then out of that conversation and what we learned, design a publicly facing community conversation where anyone could attend. Because these current ones are private. And that was our strategy. Again, not everybody loved that strategy, but that's what we did. But in the meantime, per today, we got very involved at the legislature. I told you I sit on the legislative committee for AWC. I and some other people last summer, we took this issue, which was not on the AWC agenda, and we got it front and center. And our leadership at the top, which included Councilmember Candace Mumm, supported making this one of the top issues of AWC in the legislature. At the same time, there were some amazing legislators of color, mostly younger, going forward, and the senior committee chairs said, we will support you, but stand a little bit behind you. And we passed this year, I don't know how many reforms if you want to count the subheadings, but 30 or 40 police reform changes, the most in the nation. We are now the most modern police laws in the nation, in my opinion. And that really came, there are a lot of people working on it and pushing on it, but I believe that if the Association of Washington Cities and the city of Spokane's participation in that was not there, I don't think they all would have passed. They might have, but I don't think they would have. And so I put my energies into AWC and lobbying. I testified well over a dozen times from Spokane to tell them our experience and what our solutions were. I was on the small team that negotiated. We negotiated these reforms. All of them except, well, we negotiated all of them, but I would say all but 1310 AWC supported. And AWC's team included police chiefs, mayors, and we got a big police union from the state involved. So this was a collaborative process. This was not, we got the votes, we're going to get this. This was a collaborative process. And David talked about 1054. The original 1054 looked very different than the one that passed. And it's full of compromises, and I was involved in those compromises. The first one banned all canine units, and instead we came up with a study to focus on this issue. Not that canine units can be very useful when they're on a leash and on a lead. It's when they're indiscriminately biting people that's the problem, because you can't really control them. They cause a lot of damage, they cause a lot of fear, and it's rarely necessary. In the last year, in Spokane, with city council oversight, the number of bites per use of a canine have drastically plummeted. It's about 1 per month now. It's a huge change. So the study is going to be figuring out how do we do that statewide. On vehicle chases, I proposed a system that would allow officers more leeway to chase a suspected impaired driver under DUI than the original one, and that's what passed. On tear gas, there was compromises on it. Again, there was none, and then now it's very targeted. And so we had those negotiations with police, and we got them through. So I just use those as examples throughout all the police reform legislation. All those compromises and collaboration was going, and AWC with their police chiefs and mayors were a part of it, and Spokane City Council was part of it. So our city was having an impact on that, which I was very happy about. I wanted to take just a moment because I think 1310 is the controversial bill. That's the bill that AWC didn't pass. And as some people said, well, before I say that, if you want to know really all the reforms, go to the Spokane City Council Vimeo page. So go to vimeo.com and then search for Spokane City Council. A couple study sessions ago, Chief Meidel went through everything with a PowerPoint. Really helpful. It's got it. And when I'm listening there, I'm like, yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. And I think most of you, I don't care if you consider yourself a police reform advocate or a police supporter. It all makes sense. And in fact, when Chief Meidel was presenting, he was making it make sense, and he seemed to be supportive of it. I've talked with one of our chief training officers. He's support of the vast number of these things. So it's really not an all or nothing thing. And so I encourage people to just find out what it is. It's remarkable in one legislative session that all that happened. But 1310, and some of them are independent investigations when police shoot people instead of local agencies investigating. Some of it is statewide record keeping on police officers, so police officers who get in trouble can't jump to a new city without the other one knowing. And an actual certification and decertification program. So police officers, like any other profession, are licensed and enforced when they're not. But there's so many others. But 1310, well, I'm sorry, out of my order just for a moment. But I do want to say this about the police and a little bit of what that motivation might have been on those press conferences. It's a lot that changed. It's a lot. If your organization changed that many rules in any one in a 3-month period, 3 months from when it passed to when it went into effect, it would be a lot. So there's a little bit of that going on, and you'll hear that, and I think that's a fair point. As I said earlier, it's long overdue. It's about saving people's lives, so it is urgent, and we need to do it. But we as a city, from my perspective, need to provide full support to getting all that training done and giving a little bit of grace while people adjust the training they've had for years that is now going to be different. And so there is a piece of that. And as long as the police department tells me we're full bore going and doing the training and we accept these reforms, I'm willing to give them the grace and certainly give them the resources so they can't say they don't have the resources. And what that means is it takes money. When you train people, you have to take them and pay them overtime to get trained on something like this. So it takes some money to do it, totally worth it. But anyway, I wanted to get back to the big hot spot, which is 1310. And you already heard about it, reasonable care and that part of it. David covered that great. And like so many people said, I thought that was the law. And what I call it is the law that you want the police to follow when they're pulling over your child. That's what it is. It's like, yep, de-escalate, be reasonable, don't, because we want everyone to go home alive, including the police officer. But there are two other points that the police really have raised. And one was that they read it somehow that they could no longer help in mental health crises or community caretaking. They said, oh, we can't do that anymore. That's a really important thing. But the Attorney General today, or not today, this week issued an informal opinion to the legislature. This is someone else's copy, but it's here. If you can't get a copy of it, you can email me, and I'm happy to email you. I've got a PDF of it. Basically said, no, there's nothing in 1310 that gets in the way of police assisting in a mental health crisis or community caretaking. So that is off the table. They raised the issue. It was confusing to them, perhaps, but that is no longer confusing. But the big issue that they raised, and I wanted to spend just a couple minutes on this, it's a little bit law school wonky, but in the law, if you heard the number one concern at the police conferences, is they say they're no longer able to handcuff somebody who's only under reasonable suspicion. And they think that is going to be a big problem, and they've told us that they can't protect us as well. I 100% disagree with that, but I just wanted to talk about that. And that, I just want to go back. The Fourth Amendment to our Constitution was passed in 1791. And it says you have to have probable cause to put handcuffs on someone, is what the Supreme Court has interpreted that. And usually you have to get a warrant. And you can't search a person. You can't, usually you can't search. They didn't have cars back then, but you can't search their car. They can't bust into your house. They can't look at your email. They need a warrant based on probable cause. That has been the rule. That was the rule from 1791 till June 10th of 1968. So for hundreds of years, the police were able to protect us. Almost 200 years, I should say. And there's a reason they wrote that rule, because they had lived in a police state with King George, where King George's law enforcement could just stop whoever they want, do whatever they want, go into your house. They could even put soldiers in your house. And the people who founded our country said, that's not who we are. We're citizens. We have basic rights. Law enforcement is limited. And they understood that it would be more difficult for law enforcement to enforce the laws doing that. They understood that. But that's always the tension between a democracy and a police state. If you go to Russia and China, they don't have those limitations. And they can investigate quite promptly. But the problem is when you give law enforcement a wide scope of ability to handcuff whoever they want, lots of people who get handcuffed who have done nothing wrong. They just happen to be near the scene of what happened. And so the balance that the founders created was, you got to have probable cause. Probable cause just means a reasonable person would believe that person had committed a crime. It's not more likely than not. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not hard to get. It may take a little bit of time. It's not even that much more than reasonable suspicion. And so, again, June 10th, 1968, our Supreme Court issued a ruling called Terry versus Ohio. And let's remember, well, most of you don't remember June 10th of 1968. I was young, but I do remember it because 4 days earlier, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. And the rest of that summer was the most violent summer, as far as I know, in our country's history after the Civil War. Things were tough, things were scary. So it's not surprising to me that the Supreme Court rewrote the Fourth Amendment in the summer of 1968, but that's what they did. They said you don't need probable cause. You can use handcuffs on someone for a while to investigate if you have a reasonable suspicion, and you can articulate a couple facts. One case I read in Washington, the state, the facts were the person was in a high crime neighborhood with a hoodie. And yeah, so it doesn't take much to do that. And yes, it makes it easier for police to handcuff and hold more people. Make no mistake. So that was totally against. So all those people who are for original intent, plain reading of the language, this was a huge departure. This was judicial legislation, which many people decry. What our legislature did when they passed 1310 is they restored the original meaning and interpretation of the Fourth Amendment in the state of Washington. And I, for one, think that is a great idea. It's consistent with our history. So I'm a supporter. I know it's going to be hard for the police, because all the police officers we have on duty, they've spent their entire career being able to handcuff people under just reasonable suspicion, even though that's not really authorized in the plain language of our Constitution. So it's challenging. It's going to be tough. I get why they're concerned about it. But again, for 180 years, our police were able to protect us, and they'll be able to protect us again. So I want to close with, because I've gone on too long, David thought he was going to go on too long, but I am also a lawyer. So with just this thought, since I represented AutoZem starting in 2006, my effort has been, how do we heal the relationship between the community and the police? It has been broken. It has improved quite a bit. Our police since 2012, it took them to 2012 to start, they have undergone numerous reforms. They have made many changes. And yet today in 2021, for people behind me and other people, it's not nearly enough. And they're not wrong. The police aren't wrong that they've made the changes. The work for City Council and my work that I take on, and I will spend 100% of my effort on, is how do we repair that relationship? With the understanding that community members and voters set the policy in this city of how we want to police ourselves and what kind of safety we want through our elected representatives and sometimes at the ballot box of initiatives. We are in charge. The police's job is not to set policy. It's to implement it and be as professional as they can. And I believe that almost all of them are. If I think there's a problem in our community, it is not individual officers. It is policies and training. And I've said that for years and years. And the judge on the Carl Thompson case, who was the officer in AutoZem, that's what he said as well. So it is entirely appropriate for our community members to talk to our legislators and our legislators to pass laws that reflect what the community wants for new policies and new procedures, which will result in new training, which will result in fewer deaths and fewer injuries, both to community members and law enforcement officers. De-escalation reduces injuries and deaths. It slows it down. So it's entirely appropriate. I also hope, I can't mandate anything, but I hope people will continue to give space for law enforcement to grow into these new policies and to realize that once they take off their uniform, they are people just like us. And I support them. I support everybody here. And my last two things I want to say is this last year and the results prove that when Spokane leads, Washington follows. But most importantly, my ask to you, I know there's an ask coming to you soon. My ask to you is this, that we adopt as the chief value in the city of Spokane and then make it real for all people. That in the city of Spokane, we all belong. We all belong. And when we get there, we won't be having press conferences like this. Thank you.